everyone. Welcome back to She Verse Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Wright, and today's guest is Dr. Katie. Hi, Dr. Katie.
Hey, Brooke, I just love your music at the beginning. I was just kind of moving around. It's very soothing. I love it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a returning guest, too.
Yeah, I'm so honored. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Yeah.
So, so can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you down this path of stress relief and emotional healing?
Brooke, it's a funny path. I guess everybody's is a little different. I was in my mid 50s when I decided I really needed to have my PhD. And I went back to school working full time, and all my education was all in math, science, and statistics. But all my jobs were administrative. I was always in organizational. And at that time, I was working at a college where I was trying to help a lot of students figure out how to get through to graduate, right? And I kept coming up with the same questions over and over again. Really, do I have to take math? Oh, would you take the math class for me? Or I was like, oh my gosh, math is the best subject ever. And I couldn't believe so many students were struggling, with the math. And so as I was working on my PhD, we get to choose what kind of subjects, we want to do our research on. And I said, I wanted to find out how I can help students overcome their fear and anxiety about math. And my advisor was like, yeah, that's a good idea, but I don't think there's anything to do it. And I was like, okay. So I did all my research, and it turned out, Brooke, he was right. There was like nothing about helping with fear and anxiety about math and test taking. There, all the common things that you might imagine, like get a tutor or study differently, but there was nothing there about how to help students just be able to get the strength to register for the class without crying.
Yeah.
I had adults in my office who were like they could water the plants in my office with the sweat coming off their hands just mentioning the word math. And so I thought, well, I've got to find something to help them. So I looked at my question and thought, this is kind of like a word problem. And I decided to take out the phrase math and test anxiety. And I looked up, how do you help people overcome anxiety? And that was in the year 2010. So, oh my gosh, it was so long ago now.
Man.
Yeah. And I found Nick Ortner's Tapping Solutions. It's a 10-day seminar, online kind of thing. And I would encourage everybody to do it. He does it every February. And I listened to all 10 days, and people talked about how to use this technique to help overcome fear of finances, relationships, careers. Nobody mentioned math. Nobody mentioned test anxiety. So, Brooke, I had no idea if it was going to work or not. But what I did have was a room full of petrified students who would try anything. And I was like, okay, guys, do you want to try this? And they're like, will it get me through math? And I said, I have no idea. Let's try it. So I worked with a few students, and about mid-semester, they would come back to me and they go, I'm not quite sure what happened, but I think I'm passing. And I'm like, you are? I didn't know who was more surprised, them or me.
Where can I find this at? Because I'm taking statistics right now and I am dying.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're up to being a guinea pig, we will work on you during this podcast. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. So I found this technique and I was intrigued. And so I started working with students in the capacity of my job. And then I thought, I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I better get training. So it turns out I had no idea what I was doing. And I went back and I got training in level 1 and level 2 and level 3 and matrix re-imprinting and picture tapping and quantum tapping. Now that's really interesting, Brooke. That allows people to go back to their past lives to find out what happened there.
Ooh.
And I actually became a mentor and a supervisor. And then I attained my goal of what I wanted was I wanted to train other people in this modality because it's so incredibly powerful.
Mhm.
So since I was fully certified in 2015, I've had clients all over the world that I've been able to help with in a variety of different modalities. I've had a wonderful gentleman from Mexico who had just lost a lot of weight. He lost about 100 pounds. But he found that every time he sat down to a meal, he was petrified because he was scared to death that eating this one meal was going to take him back to his previous weight.
Mhm.
And so we worked together, and now he can eat a meal and he hasn't gained the weight back at all. I've
Oh,
helped chiropractors who had a backache that they couldn't get rid of, and we got rid of it in one session. I've had a student in France who was struggling with his statistics class, and we helped him through it. I've had athletes. I had a gymnast who had, in the sports world, they call it the YIPS, YIPS, where they just get so scared of making a mistake that they can't perform. And
mhm.
I've helped gymnasts overcome that. So yeah, and it's not me. It's not me. That's the crazy thing, Brooke, is I'm just using a technique where I use the client's words, and it's actually a brain based somatic method. So we're working in the client's brain,
Mhm.
and the somatic part is where we touch different parts in the body. I don't touch them, the clients touch them. And
Oh,
like I said, we'll use you as a guinea pig and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
okay. So how did your background in education and mathematics inform the work you do now?
Great question. I always loved mathematics. I've loved it since I was a small child. It's the only
Oh.
thing that made sense to me. Growing up, I attended 12 different schools in 5 different states. And the only thing that was constant was math, because I would move from one school to the next and they would have a different reading program. Or I would leave one school where we just started studying World War I, and I'd go to the next school and they were finishing up World War II. And I think there's some interesting things that happen in between there, but I don't know what they are. But the math was constant, right? It was the
It
constant in my
is.
life, and it was something I won awards in growing up, which was really unusual because I was always the new kid, right, coming
Mhm.
into a school. So the math and the education has made a difference. Now, the fact that I've been trained in how to teach has helped me in training others on this modality. And it
Mhm.
also helps me because I'm a teacher of Qigong. So I teach an 8,000-year-old Chinese movement program called Qigong, which is just energy movement. And I also share webinars and seminars on intuition. So all of that combined, I mean, I'm at the age where I can turn back and look at all the things I did all my life. I mean, I've had so many weird jobs, Brooke.
Mhm.
But when I go back and look at them, each one of them has contributed a part to who I am today. Now, while I was in the middle of it, I didn't think so. I'd be like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? What does this have to do with anything? But each part of my life is kind of starting to fit together as a
Yes.
puzzle. I guess I was frustrated that it took me this long to get
Mhm.
to that point.
Ah, okay. I still don't see how you like math. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's killing me. And I
Well,
keep asking questions. I'm like, how do you do this? How you do that? And I'm like, I know I'm getting on her nerve.
uh, well, a good teacher will appreciate the questions, so I'll just say that.
Okay, okay. Because I don't want to feel like I'm getting on her nerve because every single like assignment I have a question and I know she's
Good,
probably like, girl.
good, good, good. Well,
So
I mean, whenever you're ready, let me know and we will go through the process.
ooh, I can't wait. I'm excited.
Okay.
So, what was the turning point that made you realize waffles needed to be addressed? And can you go through waffles for us? Oh,
Yes.
hold on. That was the next questions, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So when I first learned about this technique, I would go up to almost complete strangers in the street and grab them by the shoulders and say, I know you're stressed and I can help you. And people were like, what are you doing? Because I was so excited about the transformation that would happen in people like so quickly. And so I realized I had to back off a little bit. And so I would come up to people and say, hey, I know tapping. Can I help you? And everybody would want me to tap dance. And it's like, no, I'm not tap dancing. And so finally, I had to come up with a way to explain what the process was and who I am and what I do. And then I look back on all the years of the people that I helped, and I realized that I helped people who worried about things. I had one client who was worried about flying. I had people who had anxiety. I had one client who was petrified, had anxiety about cockroaches, and she was living in Alabama near the swamp, and that was not good.
Oh man.
I had people who had fear. That I had one pilot who had a fear of being cold, and so she was always worried about flying someplace cold. I had people who were frustrated. I had some parents who were frustrated with kids and kids who were frustrated with parents. I had people who had lethargy. People would come in and it's like, I don't have any energy. I just lay around. I just can't get motivated about anything. I
That's
had
me.
people who were exhausted.
Yep.
And finally, I had people who were stressed. And so I kind of put them all together. And that's how I came up with waffles. So now I tell people, say, who are you, what you do? And I said, hi, I'm Katie Nall, and I'm a waffles dissolver. Well, that starts a conversation about, what did you say?
Yep.
And what do you mean waffles? And then I can explain that waffles means worries, anxiety, fear, frustration, lethargy, exhaustion, and stress. And that I can show people how to dissolve all of that.
Huh. Okay. Okay. Because most of the things that you mentioned, I have, and I'm like,
Oh,
I kind of want to get in on this.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how did the idea of shower blessings come about?
Oh, shower blessings. We had three children under the age of 5. Now, I had my mother-in-law to help me, which was great. And my husband was probably an old school husband, which is basically, oh, okay, the kids are yours. He's changed a lot. But at first, it was like everything fell on my shoulders. The only place I had time by myself was in the shower.
Oh,
That was
wow.
it. And it was in the shower that I would start thinking about things and I would start praying or meditating. And I was like, okay, I kind of, it was my 4 or 5 minutes by myself, right? And it was a chance to like kind of pull things together. I was at lunch one day and I was talking to a friend. She was saying, I don't have any time to meditate. I'm like, I know. I didn't either. Until I found my shower. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, when I'm in the shower, that's when I do my meditation. And, they say cleanliness is next to godliness. So I figured it was a great
Right.
place to be. And so she said, I don't know what you're talking about. So I wrote the book for my friend.
Oh,
And it's a skinny little book. It's not much. People can usually read the entire book for about an hour. But what I've heard is that people will reference the book again and again because
hmm
I have little meditations that are in there to help people find the time to meditate and to think about where they are in the world and what they want to do. So that's
That's
how it
great.
came about.
Nice, nice. Because meditation, I didn't really start getting into meditation until I went to therapy, and that's where they used meditation the most. So, getting outside of therapy, like how would one go about like starting meditation on their own, like besides going on YouTube and watching those guided ones? Like,
Yeah.
is there on it?
Oh yeah, there's so many things that can be done, Brooke. The first thing I'd say is find some time alone. And in today's world, that's kind of tough because we have right? We have all of these all of these resources that are clamoring for our attention. We
Mhm.
have, Netflix and Apple TV, and we have
Yeah.
YouTube, and we have, all the social media, and
Mhm.
oh, by the way, we have family, and we have jobs, and everything is needing our attention. So the first thing in meditation is to find time alone.
Mhm.
And you don't have to be sitting on a pillow cross-legged, sitting straight up, chanting. I mean, that's wonderful, but it's not required. One of the things I talk about in shower blessings is that a lot of people think that it's just me talking to, and I call it Gus.
Mhm.
Gus is a short, I love acronym, short names. Gus is a short name for God, universe, or spirit. So I talked to Gus, and a lot of people don't realize that, in meditation, a lot of people think, well, I need to be giving a shopping list of all the things I need, right?
Right.
And but that's not it. It is, first of all, talking and explaining how you're feeling, and
Mhm.
more importantly, it's listening. So one of the things that I have talk about is meditate or pray a lot. ALOT. Here's another one of my acronyms. But the first thing is to be bold enough to ask. Just to give you an example, like I know my kids needed food and water and play. I knew there were certain things they needed, right?
Mhm.
But I would never know that they wanted a red wagon unless they asked me, right?
Right.
And so when we're in meditation, and when we're in whatever you want to call it, prayers, quiet, solace, um, to be bold enough to ask for what you truly want. And you may think it's a red wagon,
Mhm.
but maybe what you want is some form of fun or some form of transportation. It may be something else, but go ahead and ask for that red wagon or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And then the next step in pray or meditate a lot, and this is the one that's hard, is L is for listen. And if you listen carefully, you're going to hear the answers. Now, the answers may not be come from a speaker from up high that says, Katie, I'm not going to give you a red wagon. Instead, I'm going to give you a blue Chevrolet. I don't know. It may not be a speaker, but you may hear an intuition, something in your
Mhm.
heart. You may hear a song on the radio, or you may hear something on Spotify. A friend or relative may say something that's directly related to what you just asked for, and you kind of go, what was that all about? um, so paying attention to listening. The
Mhm.
next one is O, and this one was really hard for me, obey. And I have a number of examples in my book about where I listened and I heard things, and it was really hard for me to obey. But it's really important to obey, because if you don't obey, yeah, it's not good. And then the last one is to give thanks. It doesn't matter what happens, to always give thanks, because
Yes.
you may not get your little red wagon, but in a little bit later you may get something even better than your little red wagon. So if you don't get
Mhm.
your little red wagon, still give thanks. So that's an
Yes.
example of some of the things. And also, walking alone outside is a wonderful way to meditate.
Mhm.
In Japan, that's one of the prescriptions for therapy, is walking alone in the woods. It's a fabulous way.
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna try that. Usually, I bring my dog on walks with me because she loves walking too.
Yeah.
But I bring her, like, we'll walk in the park around the track a few times. But
Nice. Nice.
yeah, that's fun. What's the story behind your life mission, education at every turn?
At the time, I was an administrator at a non denominational church.
Mhm.
And the new minister said, everybody has to create their mission statement. I'm like, okay, what? And I had read Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Mhm.
And he talked about the importance of a mission statement that kind of sets your values, so I knew where I was going with it. And I had to stop and think. And Brooke, when I was young, I was the oldest child of a single mother. We moved around a lot. She married and divorced a lot. There was a lot of consistency, and I just knew that when I was an adult, I wanted a different life. I had no idea how I was going to get a different life. But one of the things I noticed as I looked around at all my friends is they seemed to have more education than my single mom did. I mean, she did the best she could,
Mhm.
but she never went to college. I mean, I think she had a couple courses, but she really liked to play. And so I made it when I was 18 years old. I wrote down my goals, and my number one goal was I was going to earn a PhD before I was age 25. So
Oh,
all my life, education has been like a driving force, so much so that at one point, uh, the only way I could attend my college because of transportation issues and everything was to hitchhike 20 miles each way to get to school
oh
because there
wow.
was no other way to get to school. That's how important education was to me. I was not going to be deterred. Um, so I knew that education was going to be part of my mission statement.
Mhm.
And then I stopped to realize that um, I'm always learning. In fact, I'm in a course right now on sound medicine, which is amazing. And after that's finished, I'm going to be taking another course in Qigong. So
Wow.
I'm always learning. But then, so I'm always a student, but then I'm also finding that I end up being a teacher a lot of times. I mean, a formal teacher from time to time. I've been an adjunct instructor at colleges, and I teach qigong. So and I
Wow.
teach tapping. So I mean, there's a lot of things that I do teach. So I found that my mission statement in life it really is education, but it's at every turn. So it's both as a student and as a teacher.
Oh wow. Wow. Man, you had to hitchhike? Oh no.
Yeah, yeah, that was a long story.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but that's
dang.
I would do anything to make sure that I got my education, and it was 20
Yeah.
miles away, and I was too lazy to walk.
So you got your PhD when you was in your 20s?
Oh, I got my PhD when my youngest child was in her 20s. I
Oh
was in my
wow.
50s when I
Oh
started
wow.
back. Yeah, yeah, I was
Oh
in my
wow.
50s. Yeah, I was in
You're
my
giving
50s.
me you're giving me like the motivation to keep pushing forward cuz at first I was like I'm too old to go back to school. Like I'm already 37. I
Oh
want
my God,
my
you're such a babe.
PhD and I'm just yeah, and that's what everybody was saying. They was like you're so young, go back.
Yeah.
And I'm like I felt old.
No, 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 no. No, it doesn't matter when you start. It just matters that you finish.
Yes, yes,
That's all.
yes.
Yeah, no, I was in my mid 50s. At the time, I was working out of college, so it was beneficial to them for
Mhm.
me to earn a PhD because the more PhDs they had, the better they looked.
Mhm.
And so they were very generous in helping me out with the finances and also the time. And so I would work a full day and then drive 40 minutes to the college and sit for 3 hours trying to keep my eyelids up and then come home and do it all over again.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and just to kind of give you a comparison, Brooke, while I was working full time, it took me 4 years from beginning to end to finish my PhD. And at that time, that's kind of also when I discovered tapping. And I was like, I want to be a master trainer. What do I have to do? So, from beginning to end, for me to become a master trainer in tapping while working full time, it was 8 years. It took me
Oh wow.
twice as long to become a master trainer than it did to get my PhD in mathematics education.
Oh wow. Man. So which of the waffles emotions do you see most often in people?
Stress,
Yeah, that's what
absolutely.
I was about to say.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's exactly what I was about to say because stress causes everything. Like I had a heart attack because of stress. At 37, I had a heart attack. And they
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh, Brooke.
"What?" They was like, "You're so young. You're only 37." And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't know I could have a heart attack, but I was so stressed out." And it was the people at work at my old job that was stressing me out. And I was like, I got to get
Oh,
out of here before they kill me.
yeah. Oh, I wish you would have come to me. I would have helped you.
Oh man, I didn't even know. Like I remembered you being on my podcast, but
Yeah,
didn't remember that you did like
yeah, yeah.
stress relief.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And the amazing thing is, they've done clinical studies on this, and they found that in 1 hour, let me go back. Dr. Hans Selye was the first physician to notice that stress has physical effects on the body. He was
yes,
the first one.
yes.
And and he also noticed that one of the things that happens is when we're stressed, our cortisol level goes through the roof, right?
Hmm.
And what we've found is that in measuring cortisol, tapping can reduce cortisol levels by 42%, almost by half
Oh
in
wow.
1 hour. There is not a drug on the market that can do that. So we can actually affect your physical body doing this tapping. It's amazing.
Oh wow. I can't wait to start tapping.
Yeah. Well, you let me know when we're ready and we'll do it.
Okay, okay. So how do you recommend someone to begin to dissolve their waffles?
The first thing is to recognize them.
Mhm.
Most people don't recognize that they're in stress. What they recognize is that they're tired or they're angry or there's something else. But
Mhm.
a lot of people don't recognize the stress they're under and almost until they're out of it.
Yeah.
And if you've had a heart attack, that's you probably were under stress for a long time
Yeah.
before that heart attack, and you may or may not have recognized it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing is to recognize it. And then the next thing is just to decide what you want to do about it. I
Mhm.
will say, I read something the other day and it just hit me, that traditional medicine will work on the outside going in, and things like tapping and other alternative things work on the inside going out.
Mhm.
So as we release these negative emotions from your body, because they get stuck in your body,
Mhm.
as we release them from your body, people find and see and feel physical relief.
Oh, okay. Okay. Man. So can waffles show up differently in children than adults?
Yeah, I mean, it shows up differently from person to person, right?
Mhm.
I know with my own children, um, if they were hungry, if they were hungry and tired, they would get grouchy, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that was their stress. There was stress as they were dehydrated,
Mhm.
or they were hungry, and so they would get angry. Some people, when they're stressed, will lash out on people. Some people, when
Yeah.
they're stressed, they'll turn into themselves, right? They just kind
Yeah.
of cower into themselves because they don't feel safe where they are. So yeah, everybody has different responses to the stress that they have in their body.
That's true. I get angry whenever I don't get my food either.
Oh, me too. My husband knows. It's like every 2 hours I gotta have food. We go on any trip, and before we go, he goes, "Do you have your food bag?"
So, is there a waffles emotion that tends to be the most resistant to change?
I think the one that's the most resistant is the one that people don't recognize,
Mhm.
and those are the hard ones.
Mhm.
I had a client one time who came in because he just thought he wanted to feel better. That was it. And so when I explained that we were going to start with identifying the negative emotions
Mhm.
that he was feeling in his body, he's like, "Oh no, I've got to be positive." I said, "Well, yeah, positivity is great, but you can be positive and still have negative emotions stuck in your body from other things."
Yeah.
And he said, "Nope, I'm not going to talk about negativity." And he got up and walked out.
Oh, dang.
Now, do I think he had any stress or any waffles? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but if they don't acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
That's probably the hardest one.
Yeah. When people don't, they don't want to acknowledge it because they're like, "Oh, nothing's wrong with me. I'm fine."
I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't we say that all day long?
Yeah. My mom does that, and it drives me crazy. I'm like, you know, you're not fine.
You know
Man.
her. Yeah,
So, those that are unfamiliar with tapping or EFT, can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
sure. So, tapping or emotional freedom technique, also called EFT, was developed in the 1980s by an electrical engineer by the name of Gary Craig. He was looking at what acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine calls meridians, they're energy pathways throughout our body,
Mhm,
and how these meridians are connected to different organs in our body.
mhm.
And he said, I think if you tap on these 8 spots in your body, you're going to hit 97 to 98% of your meridians, your energy pathways that are going to be attached to your organs in your body. And he added a little bit of psychology in it where we talk about the negative aspects that we're experiencing or that we feel or we remember.
Mhm.
He then took his concept of tapping. He took all this information he had and he put it out on the internet for free. It's all out there. You can go now and look up Gary Craig, Garycraig, and look up tapping, and everything is out there for free, which was very
Ooh,
generous of him.
yeah.
And he was really dedicated to it and he wanted to investigate it some more. So he went to a veterans hospital and he found Vietnam veterans who had been hospitalized and drugged for over 40 years, coming home from the Vietnam War and had severe post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The story goes that he worked with them one on one, and within a week of treatments, that the servicemen were able to get off their drugs and be released from the hospital.
Mhm.
That's pretty powerful because for 40 years they couldn't do any of that. And now he comes up with this simple technique and
Mhm.
it's releasing them from all this PTSD. And
Wow.
it has evolved over the years. There are scientists all over the world who are doing scientific studies on the effectiveness now. One of the most pronounced ones is Dr. Peta Stapleton out of Australia. She is a psychologist, psychologist. I had to stop and think. From Australia, who conducts a lot of different uh, um, testing on tapping. She started with testing on weight loss and
Oh,
helping people. Yeah, so that's where she started, and she does testing a lot. Um, there are now people. Most of the places that promote it are overseas. It. In fact, somebody was telling me just last week that there is a television show called Three Sisters, I think, on Apple TV or I can never keep up with which where they are. But anyway, but one of the sisters was actually using tapping and calling it tapping and explaining to it. So it is gaining more and more popularity. And
oh, okay.
as people are realizing the relief that they feel from
Mhm.
it, they start telling. But I will tell you, Brooke, it's a horrible business model because people will come to me with an issue. We resolve the issue. So it's like done, usually in 3, at most 6 sessions.
Oh,
And they leave and the issue's done. So they don't need me anymore. But more
ah,
importantly, they have learned how to do tapping themselves. So
yeah.
any other issue comes up, they can heal themselves. Now, I love that. I do. I love that because it puts the power back in
Uh-huh.
the client, and you don't have to go to somebody else. And the nice thing about it is that you don't need to go to a physician or
Mhm.
a psychiatrist or anyone, like that. You can actually go to a mathematician.
Yeah.
And I have a number of clients that I work with, but like I said, I work with them for a little while and they're good. So they don't
Mm.
need me anymore.
Oh man, it does sound like it really works. I want to try it now. Can we try it now?
Yeah, we can. We can.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So now to try it, I have to ask you a whole bunch of questions because
Okay.
everything has to be your words, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So you mentioned math.
Yeah.
Oh. So when was the last time that you had a negative feeling about math?
Yesterday when I was doing a math problem,
Okay. Where were you when you were doing the math problem?
I was in my living room on my computer.
Okay. And when you think about right now, let's kind of pretend like you're there, that you're in the living room and you're working on your computer on that math problem. And when you think about that right now, today, in this moment, what negative emotion are you feeling right now?
Stress.
Okay.
Like,
Okay. And from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes, where do you feel the stress in your body?
uh, right here.
What do you call this?
Like a headache. Like it's
Headache.
giving me a headache.
Okay, okay. Just right now, it's giving you a headache.
Yeah.
And from 0 to 10, where 0 is like, no big deal. I know I can figure this out. And 10 is the most stress you've had in your entire life. What number would you give that headache?
I'll give it like a 7. A
Okay,
7.
7. That's good. And is this statement true? Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to take one hand, doesn't matter which one,
Okay.
and you're going to look at the palm. And
Okay.
then with 4 fingers of the other hand, you're going to tap on the side right there.
Okay.
There you go. And you're going to repeat after me. Now, it's really important, Brooke, that if I ask you to say something and you go, that's not true, or I wouldn't use that word, I'd use a different word. Will you use the right word for you for me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Okay.
So even though
Even though
I remember yesterday,
I remember yesterday,
I was in the living room on my computer
I was in the living room on my computer
trying to do that math problem
trying to do that math problem
and thinking about it today,
and thinking about today,
I have that stress headache.
I have the stress headache.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Even though,
Even though
how come I have a stress headache today?
I don't have a stress headache today.
When I think about yesterday's math problem
When I think about yesterday's math problem
that I was doing on my computer in the living room,
that I was doing on the computer in my living room,
right here, right now, I am safe.
right here, right now, I am safe.
Even though
Even though
yesterday
yesterday
in the living room,
in the living room,
I was on my computer
I was on my computer
trying to figure out that math problem.
trying to figure out that math problem.
And today,
And today,
I have this stress headache.
I have the stress headache.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
And we're going to go to the top of the head on the crown. And you can use one hand or the other or both, whichever is comfortable. So that's fine. Yeah. So you can say on top of your head and say, this stress headache.
The stress headache.
And then above your nose on the edge of your eyebrows,
Okay.
this stress headache.
The stress headache.
And on your temples, this stress headache.
The stress headache.
And next place we're going to go is a place where I keep all my bags for a quick getaway. It's under my eyes. This stress headache.
The stress headache.
Under the nose, this stress headache.
The stress headache.
Under the lips, this stress headache.
The stress headache.
On the collarbone, this stress headache.
The stress headache.
And under the ribs, this stress headache.
The stress headache.
Put both hands on opposite shoulders, and we're going to go down to our elbows as we blow air out like a Donald Duck. So it goes like this.
My headache went away though. My headache went away because I did have a headache. That does work.
It does work. It does work. So you're saying it went from a 7 to a 0?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The headache
Okay.
is gone.
Now, let me explain something. I had a retired Air Force colonel who had retired and was working on a farm. And he came to me because he hated spiders, hated them. And I said, so what is it about the spiders you hate? He said, I can't stand going through their cobwebs. They're horrible. I said, okay, we'll work on it. So in less than an hour, he no longer was afraid of the cobwebs. I saw him a week later and I said, so how's it going with spiders? He said, I hate them. I said, wait a minute. I thought we had figured it out. And he said, oh, I'm not worried about the cobwebs anymore. I just hate the way they move. They're so awful. So the reason why I share that story is we got rid of your headache about working on the math problem yesterday. There may be other aspects of math and the problem that need to be removed, that can be removed probably in 3 sessions so that you can be comfortable. Now, let me explain why that's important. When you're feeling stressed, what happens is your blood vessels start kind of closing in. And the reason why they do that is so that you can like run quicker and you're not going to be digesting food or thinking about stuff. So your blood vessels to your brain kind of come to a stop because you don't want to have to think when you're in stress.
Right.
So when your blood vessels constrict and they're up in your head and you're trying to think of a problem, there's nothing going to your head. So that's why when you go into a test, you freeze because you're so stressed.
Yes.
So it's the idea of unlocking those and de-stressing or de-waffling that allows you to be able to think clearly and to explain what you already know in a testing situation.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, because I felt a lot better about math now. Like, because it was really stressful. Like, it was. And my headache was going. And yeah, it's a lot better. Like, now
Oh, good.
that because I have a day to finish this test. And I don't feel as stressed going into this test now.
Yay.
So, how do your spiritual beliefs influence your healing work?
Hmm. So I was born and raised Catholic.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, so there's a lot of rigor and ritual, which in many ways is comforting. Um, when I married, my husband was raised Baptist, and when we had children, we were trying to find someplace in between. So we found a United Church of Christ, and so we raised our kids in there. Um, as I was doing my shower blessings,
Mhm.
um, I became more comfortable asking and listening and obeying,
Mhm.
um, and started developing a more personal relationship with Gus, as I call him, and which is different from Catholicism. Because
Mhm.
in Catholicism, there's a whole series of people that you need to talk to before you can talk to God. You know,
Yep.
it starts with your priest and then your bishop, and then there's a variety of saints. I mean, I talk to Saint Anthony every time I have to lose something. So, and he comes through every time. And then there's, you know, if it's really serious, you might be able to talk to the Virgin Mary. And people don't talk about Joseph that much, but anyway, but like you're not supposed to talk to Jesus or his father at all. Like that's
Okay.
reserved for the Pope, right?
Yeah.
And even talking to the Pope is pretty, you know. So having a personal relationship is not something that is really developed in the Catholicism I was raised in.
Uh-huh.
Um, so discovering that I could do that made a big difference.
Mhm.
Now, if you when we started attending United Church of Christ, they use something called the Bible, which I had never seen before. Because we had a missal of prayers. That's what we had in the Catholic Church.
Oh.
And so I started getting into the Bible. I joined Bible studies. I started reading things. And I read things like Jesus saying that he was healing people. And he said things like, do as I have done.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, does that mean that we are supposed to learn how to heal people just like he did?
Mhm.
And so I started questioning a lot of things. Now, as the kids grew up and left, my husband said he wasn't going to go to church anymore. And I said, okay, well, if we're going to do something, we live near the ocean. I said, we'll walk the beach on Sunday mornings. I said, but, because I always have criteria. I said, but we will each pick a scripture and give our interpretation of a scripture to one another.
Uh-huh.
And Brooke, that was just amazing to do that, because when you go into a church service, it's very much one way. You know, the
Yep.
minister or the priest is
Mm.
telling you their interpretation of whatever it is they want to talk about. But when my husband and I were walking the beach, he was telling me about a scripture that he had read and his interpretation, and I was able to have a discussion with him. And that was like a huge insight for me. He had picked one scripture that I heard a lot of. I can't remember the notation, but it was basically that your tongue is like a rudder that steers your life.
Mhm.
And every sermon I've ever heard using that, I'm paraphrasing, I know, but every sermon I'd heard on that was basically beware of your tongue. You know, don't say bad things because it's going to affect your life. But my husband's interpretation was, you know, what if you want good things in your life? What if you start speaking about them in a good way? Then maybe that's going to steer you in. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was incredible insight. So that kind of opened the door to me thinking maybe I could like start this kind of communication that developed into shower blessings. Now,
Yeah.
when I do tapping, I always let the client know that I am a vessel. You know, I am here to help them find their way to heal themselves, basically.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. It did. Wow. Um, so my last and final question that I have for you today before I let you go is if you could leave the audience with just one message for today, what would it be?
Oh, Brooke, one of my favorite recurring reminders I have is that this too shall pass.
Yes. I
And what
love it.
that means to me is that if I'm having an incredibly good day, is to sink everything into it because it's not going to last. And to enjoy squeeze every last moment of happiness out of it, to just take as much as I can out of it. And on those days where I'm like spent and it's like I can't do anything more, to remember that it will pass and that tomorrow is a new day.
Yes, I love that. I love it. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Katie, for coming on my podcast and chatting with me.
You are amazing, Brooke. I don't know how you do it all. And you're such a great researcher. I'm so impressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye bye. Hey everyone, I want to thank you all so much for listening to my interview with Katie. So, she does have a book about meditation, so definitely go check that out. It's a great book. I'm going to get it and hope you will too. Thank you all so much for listening. See you next time for the next interview. Bye.